Going into year 2 of the Matt Rhule era in Lincoln, Nebraska, what do the Cornhuskers have to do to accomplish what they want to accomplish in 2024? Now, quick plug here. We have a sit-down interview with Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule tomorrow on this very program, The Hard Count. Okay, so we're live 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central for y'all in Lincoln. Lock in, great conversation, 15 minutes, talk to Matt Rhule about culture going into year 2, talking about his process, talking about Dylan Raiola in that quarterback room. Hey, what's the timeline there, Coach? A lot of really good notes from Coach Rhule. Also, we asked him about the dunk competition and the promo videos he's cutting before games with just the cinematic pep talks he's given. Pep talks even feels like too soft of a word. Bottom line, make sure you're locked in tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on the On3 YouTube channel. We'll have a live show. That's the one you want to click on. All right, so expectations for Matt Rhule and company and for this entire fan base is this is the year we make a bowl game and then some, okay? Like, it's bowl game or bust. That is the bare minimum. And I'm not just saying that for the folks outside the walls. I happen to believe that's the way that they feel inside those walls too. Like 5-7, nobody's okay with that. I promise you Matt Rhule's not okay with that. That staff's not okay with that. Not what they're accustomed to. But year 1 to year 2, if we've seen Matt Rhule and his track record, there's usually a pretty solid jump from that first to second year. And we talk about this tomorrow with Matt Rhule, but like what he took over at Nebraska from a roster talent standpoint is different than what it was at Baylor. Baylor, they were at ground zero. There were folks in Waco that were calling for Baylor to have the death penalty. Temple, they were not good. They were winning, I think it was like 1 or 2 games. And so that's not me speaking to those situations and my opinion on them, but I am saying right now for Matt Rhule, he has a better jumping off point with a team that was very close to making bowl games before he got there. And so last year there was the close losses and all that. And so what has to happen internally for Matt Rhule in Nebraska is not so much a Matt Rhule thing, but more so a buy-in thing from his team. That's not me saying they weren't bought in last year, but I'll just kind of start here. Like, I don't have a journalistic background. Didn't study broadcasting in college. I come from a football background. And so what I'm trying to say here is there is a very big difference within a locker room when it's a coach's way versus a team's way. And so coaches, they set the standard. They give you the blueprint, they draw the map out, but you got to actually have your team be bought in and understand, like, hey, that's cool that this is what the coach is saying, but if we want to win football games, it has to be on us across the board in this locker room to live that out every single day. Because it's one thing when the coach is telling you and coaching you and blowing the whistle and yelling at you. Like, at that point, yeah, you're going to do what's asked of you. But what about when you're back at your apartment or back at your dorm? Are you going to choose to eat the right things? Choose to go to bed at the right time? Are you going to choose to do the right things on the weekend? Choose to do the right things when you don't have to come into the facility and there's nobody watching you and telling you got to show up to the workout? All those things, they sound like small little detail things, but I promise you the little things, they add up and they make up the big things. And so that's a culture thing. I truly believe that, and I don't think it's a thing that concerned about for Nebraska, but going from 5-7 to getting through that glass ceiling and going and accomplishing what Nebraska wants to accomplish in 2024, there has to be that buy-in. And you've seen it across the board in college football at some really visible spots. Saw this at Texas. Steve Sarkisian, and when he got there, they were 5-7, college football playoff team last year. How come? Because they bought in. It was Steve Sarkisian's way. Then that year 3, they were all the way bought into the way that Steve Sarkisian wants to do things. You had players policing it. Saw it at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, when he got there, like he didn't inherit a national championship winning football roster. Had to change the way they did things. Saw it at Florida State with Mike Norvell. You're seeing it, I believe, slowly but surely at Miami. The bottom line is there has to be buy-in from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. Then, in addition to that, there has to be a reinvention, a rejuvenation, if you will, of what this team expects of themselves. It sounds like I'm telling you they have to have higher aspirations and bigger goals. I don't mean that at all. What I'm trying to tell you is when it gets to that fourth quarter, and it's a one-score game, it's going to be very easy for the outside noise to leak into the internal parts of this team and say, well, they just lose close games. Well, they just got one-score losses here or there. They had this many one-score losses a season ago, and that's why they make a bowl game. Past is the past. You can't change it. Last year is last year. To accomplish what you want to accomplish, you have to shake the dust mentally. I'm speaking very much so about philosophical things here, but I promise you it all adds up. It's all true. That's what makes the difference when it's roster-to-roster comparison. when you have even talent on the playing field, it's about how you approach things. And so for Nebraska, I'm not saying this is something that's haunting them, but I think it has to be extremely, extremely emphasized that it can't be a thing where you get to that one-score game and you worry about, okay, are we going to have that one-score loss again? Is this going to happen to us? Are we snake-bitten? No, none of those things are true. None of those things are real. They've been true situationally for the better part of the last few years. Doesn't have to be true going forward. Matt Rhule talks about it in tomorrow's interview. He says, listen, I wasn't here for those one-score losses. I wasn't a part of those. I don't think that's something that I have to keep living with. It's not we have to keep living with. And so I'm excited for y'all to hear that tomorrow. But just a little preview there. Changing the temperature. I don't think it's a problem internally, but I just want to make sure we talk about that because it's human. It's very easy to think that you have, some sort of external issue with yourself and how you can't win one-score games. All that is just talk. It's all stuff that people like to sit behind a microphone and say. I don't think it's real, is what I'm trying to tell you here. The strengths for Nebraska to get to where they want to go have to be the strengths they had last year. Now, you have to build on those for sure, but Nebraska can't be this thing where, okay, we take steps forward offensively, throwing the football, and we do a better job not turning the ball over, and then defensively we take 2 steps backwards. Bringing Tony White back for them was absolutely massive, the DC for them. I think it's going to translate well, too, for these new teams coming into the conference. That 3-3-5 defense, we've talked about it here on this show. It allows you to be aggressive, allows you to be confusing, allows you to play fast, allows you to match up with, quite frankly, those spread offenses that you'll see from Lincoln Riley, from Oregon, from Washington. I would imagine from UCLA here going forward, but we'll keep an eye on what they look like offensively. The bottom line is here, 78% of that production on defense is back from last year. They allowed 18 points a game. The strengths, got to say the strengths. Same thing with what they did offensively last year. Yes, there was a lot to be upset about. There was a lot to desire more from, but they ran the ball for 177 yards a game. That'll do. That'll do just fine if you build on top of it. 77% production offensively is back from last year. The reason why that's crucial, those 2 pieces of Nebraska's football team, stout attacking defense, pretty solid rushing attack, that's a part of their identity. That's who Matt Rhule wants to be. We sat down with him a year ago when he took the job, and he was like, I think the way that I want to coach, the way that I want to build my football team is the same thing that this fan base wants from our football team. Okay, tough, tackle, block, run the football, play well in cold weather. That's still, I think, the core of who they want to be. Now, it's also crucial to run the football and to play good defense because you're probably, I say probably very generously here, probably going to have a new quarterback. I love Heinrich Haarberg. I think Dylan Raiola is the most talented quarterback on that roster. He's going to have to go win the job. But if you're breaking in a new quarterback who's supposed to be at prom this time, instead he's at spring football, and he's going to jump into his first season playing college football, you got to have some structure around him. If you put the entire weight of the 2024 campaign on Dylan Raiola's shoulders, that's not really a fair scenario to put that young gun in. Expect good things from him. Expect him to be a difference maker for you in some key scenarios. Expect him to make those throws that maybe other quarterbacks couldn't make on your roster a season ago. That's fine. But don't put all the weight on him and say, hey, Dylan Raiola, we're going to put you in 3rd and 12 pretty much every other series. Go win for us. That's not a winning recipe. And notice now, if that does happen, you'll hear a lot of people say, Dylan Raiola this, Dylan Raiola that. We don't listen to that. Just understand there's a lot of context here. The context has to be solid. The identity has to be solid around your new quarterback, assuming it is Dylan Raiola, to go forward and to be successful. So that has to be in place. Now, I want to make sure we stress this here before we get out of here. It's not about year 2. It's not. Year 2 is a part of it. I promise you everyone internally has goals of competing at the highest level at Nebraska, winning at the highest level at Nebraska. And so I don't think this is something that they would ever echo. But for me, just from a macro level, Nebraska in year 2 is about laying the foundation to close that talent gap. Because to win in the Big Ten, I don't think you have to have a better roster than Ohio State or a Michigan or a Oregon. I don't think that has to be the case. But I do think you have to have that gap shrunk a little bit. I think you have to be within striking distance. And I think that's attainable. Nebraska as a brand, I mean, when it's up, like when Nebraska is nationally relevant, folks want to come play at Nebraska. I truly believe that. And so being able to lay the groundwork and be able to send this message to the entirety of the college football community, especially recruits, and say, hey, we're going a certain direction, come play in the Big Ten, come play against the best competition in college football, come play for one of the most storied brands of college football, come be a part of this. because we're headed one way. Look at our record. We're improving year in and year out. That's what I think you would like to be able to communicate to future Huskers. Year 2 is about sending that message. And I'm not saying they can't do tremendous things and win how they want to win in year 2, but I think sustained success will come as a result of the trend and attracting talent because of that trend. So again, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, lock in right here. Great conversation with Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule. Going to be a lot of fun. To make sure you don't miss it, would encourage you to subscribe. All right, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram at JD Pickell as well. We're gonna have some snippets of that interview leak out there before the full thing goes live. But again, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. College football, spring football season, best sport in the world. We're gonna keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.